Introduction is an overview. This is the one lecture that I probably get hung up with trying to do too much detail, so I'll try to do less detail, because everything that's here in this lecture is actually covered later on in each of the individual chapters. So the objectives of this one describe the versions of Windows 7. There are a number of versions. Mostly they don't concern us a whole lot for home, but they may concern you a whole lot for business. Particularly some of the odd ones, like the EU has a decision against Microsoft that doesn't allow them to force you to use Internet Explorer. So the European nations have a separate version of Windows 7. Korea has a separate version of Windows 7. Does that concern you if you're installing it at home? Absolutely not. What if you happen to be working for a multinational corporation that has offices in Europe? Then that's going to concern you. So the versions discuss the new features in Windows 7. We'll look at some of those things, the new features, and you probably used all the new features. The Windows 7 user interface, you've already used that because you've been working with it for a while. The hardware requirements to support Windows 7, they're not as dramatic as you might think. And obviously, every time you go into a Windows system, the more memory you can put into it, the better it's going to be. The machines that you use, the most we can go to, since they're 32-bit machines, is 4 gig. The limitation on a 32-bit machine, the memory limitation is 4 gig. Actually, it's 30-something another. We say 4 gig. It's a little less than that. There's all that the operating system will handle. Application support built into Windows 7. Essential connectivity applications used in Windows 7. These are all really great words approved by Microsoft, obviously. The networking models supported by the different versions of Windows 7. How many networking models do we really have? We can do that one right now. 2. We had a domain model and a workgroup model. And that's it. And the only difference between them is where does authentication actually happen. In the domain model, just like in here, regardless of which computer you log on to, you use your domain credentials, right? And if you're off campus, logging into the virtual machines, Roanoke, /, and you do have to use the /, not the / because Server 2003, 2008 on up cares. Before that, didn't really care whether it was a / or a /. Now it does. You have to do that. So the different working models of these things. The additions, and this is the one that I added from my friends at Microsoft. Basically, we'll have a consumer, business, enthusiast, and an enterprise, and entry-level and emerging markets of these things. Consumers, the home and the premium, the standard consumer editions, and doesn't include business features. Business features being things like, can you join it to an Active Directory domain? You can't do that with the consumer model. The business models, professional, business-focused edition, include the business features. And one of the things that we do with the business feature is take out all the entertainment stuff, because you don't really need that in the business environment. Enthusiasts, Windows 7 Ultimates, all the features, and Windows 7 Ultimate and Windows 7 Enterprise are the same one. Enterprise is the one that you're going to be working with. It is only for companies that have bulk, buy licenses in bulk when we go through these things. Emerging markets, there's a Windows 7 Home Basics Emerging Markets, one that's designed to run on really minimal hardware, and when they talk about that, they usually talk about maybe Africa or emerging economies, places like that. At entry-level PCs, Windows 7 starters, these are really lower-level ones that you're probably never going to see when we do these things. The Windows 7 starter here, and I'll probably have to run this from over here, specifically for the small form factor machines that don't have a lot of anything. It is only a 32-bit operating system, which means that we've got a memory limitation. not a processor limitation. Features, the improved Windows taskbar and jump list. Jump list is the kind of thing, if you have something in your taskbar and you right-click on it, the jump list will show you which documents have been recently opened. You can jump to them. That's why it's called the jump list. You jump directly to those things. The search, the Windows search, and I think, personally, the Windows search has been much improved over the old search capabilities in this one. The ability to join a home group. Does anybody use a home group? It's pretty handy, actually. What a home group does and when you do a home group, and I'll ask you later on to join a home group, when you set up your network, because you get these questions, you want to be a work group, a home group, or a public group, right? Which do you want to be? It's got to be a home group. The public group, when you go to a hotel, and I had to go on a trip this weekend, and I was at a hotel, and an acquaintance was in the same hotel and went in and looked all around, and guess what? All of her stuff showed up. Because when you go to a hotel, you want to say it's a private group. Private network, private group, private network. That prevents other users from connecting to your machine. The work group, the work network, I'll get the right words here in a minute, and the home network, not a whole lot of difference, but to join a home group, you have to be in a home network. You can't join it from a work network. Work network would be an Active Directory domain or something like that. And if you've never used one of these things, it's just you take one machine and say, I want to form a home group, put a password in, and you go to your next machine and say, I want to join the home group, and you can share whatever you want to out of it. You can share it read-write to the home group or whatever you want to do. It's kind of handy if you've got more than one machine on your network that you may want to actually do work on from different locations. The Action Center and Device Stage Fax and Scan. The Action Center tells you all the things that are wrong, theoretically, what's happened with the machine. Enhanced media streaming, broad applications, no limitations on how many applications can run simultaneously. Secured, reliable, and supported operating system. These are great Microsoft words, right? Secured. It actually is an awful lot more secure than the other things have been. And some of the questions that I ask in the lab, you say, why did he ask those things? Like, what are the default users and groups that are available? There's a lot more of them in Windows 7 than there were in Windows XP, and that's how they got some of the security, by splitting up what different default groups can do in the system. Reliable. Does anybody think it's more reliable? You've been using Windows 7 for a while. Is it more reliable? I think it's absolutely more reliable. XP was very mature when it went away. Supported operating system. XP's got to be supported for, I forgot what it was. It's like maybe next year the support goes away for it. That's because they already tried to take it away once, and the Australians sued them and said, no, you got to keep support for X number of years. But it only supports Service Pack 3. If you're still using XP, be sure you've updated to Service Pack 3 to do those things. Now we're going to go up these things. We're going to add to the different versions. So that was the starter version. The basic version has everything that's in the starter version as you go. It's everything that was in the lower one plus this stuff. No limit on the number of programs you can root, live thumbnail previews, advanced networking support, ad hoc wireless networks. And one of the things that you also get into with some of the versions and not some of the other versions, you don't have as complete a control of the networking capabilities. The Windows Home Premium, which is probably what most of us are running, true, or professional if you got it from your MSDNA account, and actually they changed the name of it. But that's professional that you get from it, right? Your version is professional. And if you hadn't gotten it, get it. If you hadn't got your Windows 8 copy, get it, because they change what's on that website occasionally. And something that you say, I'll get it later, may go away. So go ahead and download them. Get your keys in order to do that. Windows additionally includes the Home Premium Windows Aero Glass, which everybody that likes really neat visuals have Windows Aero Glass. What's the problem with Windows Aero Glass? If you've got a weak machine, it's going to take a lot of resources. When you install your virtual machines, and then I go through it, we want to turn all of that stuff off. It makes the virtual machines run a lot better. You guys were using the ones in room 104, and they had that installed. It was running, right? How can you make them a little more efficient? Turn all that off. It's up to you. Multi-touch and handwriting support in these things. Ability to create a home group. The other ones could join a home group. Now you can create a home group. DVD, video playback and authoring, which not necessarily a good thing because it'll tell you that you can't play this DVD if it's not in your region. Media Center, snipping tool. I think the snipping tool is one of the really, really good additions to the whole setup. Allows you, if you haven't used it, allows you to copy. It's kind of like print screen, but you get to pick what you want to do, and you make an image of whatever part of the screen that you want to, and in my case, submit for some of your labs, or send to somebody, or save, or do whatever else with it. Sticky notes. If you use those, I've had a couple of students who are really big on the sticky notes, especially when I do something that they don't like. It's okay. One of the things that may happen to you, and please let me do it, when you're using the virtual machines, I digress. If I stumble across you doing something you're having problems, I'll probably try to start something like Notepad and write you a note. What people will do a lot of times is fight me. Notepad will start now closing. Notepad will start now closing. Maybe I can give you a hint that'll help you out. We can have our own little chat session right there on your virtual machine. So sometimes that does. Windows Journal and Windows Slideshow, all of the things that are there. Windows Professional, again, the one that you get, adds core business features such as domain join. The home premiums cannot join, the home versions can't join a domain. So in a business environment, you need to go at least with a professional if you're going to run Active Directory. Group policies are available there. Data protection. Advanced network backup and encrypted file system are there. The backup system in Windows 7, they did improve over Vista because you can actually pick up Vista. You had to back up the whole machine. That was the only way you could do it. You do have to back it up to someplace off of the machine, and oh, by the way, this does not support tape backups. You can do it to a share, you can do it to a hard drive, you can do it to a flash drive, you can do it to any USB drive that you plug into it, but it doesn't support backup to tape. Print right to the printer at home or work with location-aware printing. That sounds like, oh yeah, that's just something it's going to find. That's something that does have to be configured in order to do that. Remote desktop is also something. Remote desktop host is something that's not available. In these, you can remote desktop to something, but you can't remote desktop to it. You can in the business type versions, professional on up. There are softwares that you can put on here to do this, obviously, but with those. Remote desktop, Windows Virtual PC, and Windows XP mode. Windows XP mode is a little bit different than running a virtual machine on the desktop itself. It's sort of like it, sort of not like it. If you have, and again in a business environment, certain applications that will only run on Windows XP, and that's not anything that would be out of the realm of possibility, you can run XP mode and actually run the applications right from the start menu, and it'll run within the XP machine itself, which again is a little different than running a virtual machine on the desktop, which you can do if you need to do those things. So professional, the enterprise, BitLocker and BitLocker To Go. You've heard about BitLocker an awful lot, probably about BitLocker, and I said we can't do it on our virtual machines. BitLocker encrypts the entire hard drive. BitLocker To Go, I think, and this is just me, I think BitLocker To Go could help us out an awful lot with all of these People that are leaving flash drives in their hotel rooms and losing thousands of records, BitLocker To Go will encrypt your flash drive. So that's kind of a handy thing to have if you want to do those things. App Locker allows you to control who can run specific applications. Most of you, actually I think Tom, maybe not, but kids, and this is where it may come in, what do you want to do? How do you want to control what goes on? Who can run different things? One of the things I kind of warn you about here, when you do that lab, and that's much later when we do an App Locker lab, they'd have you do there are two ways to control applications. The application control, App Locker will become the overriding one. So you do one, and they tell you you're not supposed to be able to start Notepad, I think is what they have you block. And then you install App Locker right after that. And oh golly, all of a sudden it can work because App Locker gives control or gives you the ability to run everything in the System 32 or Windows System 32 and the program files. And the System 32 is where Notepad is. So, and it's the one that takes precedence over the other one. So when you get into those things, you got to look into a couple of other things. And oh, by the way, there is a process that's not running it. You have to start too. Direct access branch cache is something that is related to Active Directory and Active Directory machines, servers that are in different locations. Branch cache allows you to cache things that are downloaded from, for instance, from Virginia Beach to Roanoke so that you don't have to download it every time. You cache it directly in the machine itself. Worldwide interface of languages so that you can install language support. And what that means is, when my son was in high school, the Spanish teacher went through a whole bunch of different things to make the special characters that you use in the foreign languages. If you install language support, you can just shift to that keyboard, and it will automatically give you those things. And in German, you do the umlauts. German's the one I'm familiar with. So those are there. That support is available here. Enterprise search scopes, virtual desktop infrastructure enhancements, the ability to boot from a VHD, a virtual hard drive, which means that you don't actually have to install it on your hard drive. You can install it on a virtual hard drive and boot from it. May be a big deal, maybe not a big deal. But what that does means then that you can make a virtual hard drive and copy it to all your machines and change your boot sequence so that it boots to that hard drive instead of having to go back and change everything on the physical drives themselves. Virtual hard drives still take storage space on the physical hard drive, but the management is through the virtual drive itself. And Windows 7 Ultimate, you notice not a whole lot of changes between it and Enterprise. Technical enthusiasts who want all the Windows 7 features without a volume license agreement. Windows 7 Enterprise and Windows 7 Ultimate are the same software. Volume licenses for Enterprise, something like ECPI Tidewater Incorporated does volume licensing to do those things. All the features of the Enterprise not licensed for VDI scenario. So that's the overview of the different versions of this thing. And I didn't take the others out. So this is the same one that was in the other one. Actually, there was one back there that didn't say here. Home Premium, up to 2 physical CPUs, not cores, but physical CPUs can go into these things. 64-bit version, 32-bit version, as we get into these things. So they kind of did them backwards. They did the high ones first. What they didn't talk about was the Windows 7 N and K editions, which are the Europeans. The N release is only sold in countries that don't allow Microsoft to bundle the media player, Live Internet Explorer, the media player software as part of the operating system. Read that. The European nations don't allow that. K release is sold only in South Korea. Some features removed, such as the Windows Media Player. These are specifics based on governments that don't allow them to do specific things along with what's going on. So let's take a break for a few minutes. Have I put everybody to sleep yet?
Nope.
The new and enhanced features. Anybody found any new and enhanced features? Probably been so long since you used XP you don't remember, hasn't it? Honestly. 3264-bit computing support, Arrow, Net Framework 3.5, which is kind of gone to Net Framework 4.0 now for most things. Speech recognition. Does anybody use the speech recognition just out of curiosity? Is it any good? Which is, I guess, kind of handy if you can make it work, because for all of you really great typists, you can talk to your machine. IE8, which is now an IE9, right? And IE10 in Windows 8. User account control, the thing that everybody loves to hate. True? Pop-up says, "Did you do this?" Not nearly as bad as it was in Vista. Well, what does Linux do? You got a bunch of you just finished the Linux class, right? Or in the middle of Linux class. What does it do? Introduction. You know what it does when you try to install something? It doesn't just say, "Do you want to keep going?" It says, "Put your credentials in." And you can configure this to do the same thing if you want. It's handy because, hopefully you haven't been, but I was working with a guy not long ago, went to a website, and said all of a sudden after I went to this website, my computer didn't work anymore. And the guy that designed the website said, "Oh, it's just an innocuous script." There are no innocuous scripts. A JavaScript. How many Java updates do you get lately?
Every day.
Every day. You know why? You can find holes in it. What if you had user account control, and I will call it user access control a lot? Did you do this? And you can say no, and it'll stop the operation. And that's what it's about. Anytime, it was supposed to happen, anytime that anything tries to make changes to the hard drive, to the computer itself, that's where the user account control comes in. Fast user switching enhancements. Fast user switching is kind of handy, and these machines have them. What's really handy about these machines is when somebody walks away and it locks, how do you get on? Just change user. So you can log on as you while somebody else is logged on. Remember, when that happens, they're still logged on. When you shut it down and say other people are on this machine, do you really want to do this? Just say yes, because they shouldn't have walked away from it, right? The Windows Driver Foundation, repair and restart improvements. I have had like one occasion where it came up and said, "You're really damaged. Put in your installation media," and it actually did fix the system. It was one of the machines here. So the repair actually works pretty well. Rapid deployment, BitLocker drive encryption, trusted platform module services, and the trusted platform module services is related to the BitLocker encryption. You have to have TPM in order for BitLocker to actually work.
So
Network connectivity.
So safe to say that Windows BitLocker is a form of security?
It's a form of security. It encrypts the entire hard drive. But you have to be able to get back onto the machine, right? And that's what the Trusted Platform Module is for. And actually, if you don't have this, you can use a flash drive. What this prevents is you encrypt something and somebody can't get on it. What's the next step that you do if you can't use it? Take the hard drive out, plug it into another machine. But since it's encrypted and you don't have the encrypt or the key, the authentication key, and that's what goes into TPM, then the drive remains encrypted and can't be, without some effort, unencrypted. You really can lock yourself out and stuff, yes. And I have known people that have done that. Put on BitLocker and forgot or whatever. Well, you know what the next step is? That's when you go in and reinstall and say, wipe everything out and start all over. That's where backups come in. Exactly right. If you've got a backup, you're in good shape. How many people have backups? And I won't put my hand. I got my data backed up, but that's about it. And that's really all you need, isn't it? Because I always say this: theoretically, you own all your applications. So what's not replaceable. You've got the operating system, you can do that, and what's not replaceable by things that you own is the data itself, so you really don't have to back the whole world up. It's a lot easier if you've got a current backup of it, because you got an image and you just put that on and you can keep going from where you were. And then network connectivity, a little bit easier. Wireless in particular is easier than I think than it was in the XP. Comes in both a 32-bit and a 64-bit processor versions, and the advantage here obviously is 64-bit, bigger word size, and the fact that you can put more memory in a 64-bit system, and that all has to do with the number of bits that are available, 2 to the n kind of things. 64-bit is in the terabyte region. 32-bit is 4 gig is the maximum that go on a 32-bit system, and that's a limitation of the hard drive itself. Windows supports 192 gig. Depending on the operating system itself, that's going to be more. As a theoretical limit for processing data, not everything is compatible with this, and when you install this, you've got 2 program files now, all right? You got the program files, the x86, the 32-bit program files go into there, and program files themselves in the 64-bit system. The 64-bit programs go into the program files. So in the 64-bit system, you're going to have 2 program files. If you're looking for one, you may have to find it. Upgrade Advisor will check to see if, theoretically anyway, what's not going to work when you get done. Is the hardware compatible, and it should also tell you which software won't work when you get done with the upgrade. And typically it's going to be something that's specific to the operating system, programs that are running there. Arrow, visual theme, and they really love this thing. Arrow Glass started with Vista, and it kind of gives you the transparent, offers a new pleasing user experience. If you don't have a machine with enough memory and enough horsepower to run it, it's also going to slow down the system. And you can see that by turning it on and turning it off. Video card with at least 128 megabytes of RAM is recommended for the Arrow. Graphics card drivers got to support DirectX 9 and the WDDM driver. And that's just a picture of that. The .NET framework, multiple application programming interfaces, and again, a lot of stuff has migrated to the 4 instead of 3.5 .NET Framework 4.0. Some of them still run under 3.5, some run under 4.0. So you may need to update that. The Presentation Foundation allows the applications to draw to the screen, which is supposed to make everything more pleasing, more usable as you go through these things. And Windows is a visual operating system. Would you agree with that? And most of us like visual. I do. I like to see things. I like pictures. You can tell by my Moodle pages I like pictures. Those hopefully all represent something when you go through those things. To build applications, the card space protects the digital identity. This is something that's supposed to allow you to put in passwords that you use, and then you can get authenticated. It's kind of like, supposed to be like a little password storage software. Speech recognition beyond the keyboard and the mouse. You may want to try it out on your Windows 7, Windows 8 machines if you want to talk to the system, because you can teach it. It is there. I've had students say, yeah, I used it. It works pretty well. The one that I don't like is anybody ever use the read back to you? Oh, it's awful. Isn't it not? The narrator, yeah, the narrator, it's awful. But this speech recognition, you can train it to recognize you, and you should be able to speak to the to the softwares, to the Word and things like that, instead of actually typing the system in. Supports spoken corrections and multiple languages, so it's there. Commands to perform typical Windows operations are built in it. Internet Explorer 8 newest version, we're just going to say that it's there. They've got some activities for you to do some management of those things, and you obviously can. When you do these and they have you put passwords on, please use the one that's in the book, because what happens when you go to do that parental support or the parental management of these things, a lot of times what happens is people put their own password in and they forget it. Now all of a sudden my Internet Explorer doesn't work. Well, yeah, because you got another password. So if you use the one that's in the book, you won't have that problem. Just go back and look at the book when you do those things. User account control, security level for an account to be fine-tuned, and there are 4 levels, I guess, of this thing. Basically, you can tell it to ignore everything. You can do that if you want. You won't get the pop-up and says, did you do this? It'll just automatically go ahead and install the virus for you.
Sweet.
Yeah. Or you can tell it to pop up where you can say OK, or you can tell it to pop up and be just like Linux and say, put in your credentials, if you have the authority. By default, everybody, I guess, knows by now, by default, Windows 7 and Windows Vista runs with the administrator, the username administrator's account disabled. That is a security issue. I'll digress a little bit. All administrator accounts that Windows has ever made has a security ID number of 500, which means that anybody's a good hacker. They don't care what the name of the account is. All they look at see what the SID is. Okay, so this says it's Abraham Lincoln. Well, it's SID 500. It's administrator. Those things go through there. User account control allows you to run most of the time as an ordinary user. And then when you need to do something administrative, if they're in an administrator's group, you get the user account control. If you haven't disabled it, pop-up says, do you really want to do this? To me, that is one of the big safeguards of this one, and should help out keeping the machines clean, as long as you don't tell it to not do those things. It can be prompted for administrator approval, or you can tell them to put in the account. Has added new privileges to the standard user account. One of the, I think, other than the stability issues with Vista, one of the things that people really didn't like, me included, I used it for about 3 or 4 months until I got a copy of Windows 7 to upgrade it to, is every time you turned around, it would pop up, did you do this? Did you do this? Of course I did that. What Windows 7 has done, they use the same features, the same security features, but, my words, a little less annoying than Vista was. But that's something that I think you really, really do want to use. Fast user switching. It was in XP. Faster switching in both the work group and the domain mode. It will allow switching in both of those. If you have a work group mode, if you have an account on the machine, or a domain mode if you have an account in Active Directory, you can use either one of those. Join to the domain. The driver foundation architecture, the Windows driver model, a little more efficient. This is not anything that we're going to manage. This is something that's part of the system itself, the